This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Raquel from Filmmaker U at Filmmaker U courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com or of course follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week I'm joined by a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by composer Adam Blau, whose work includes Brockmire, Pickled, and more recently, Dead to Me. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Hey, good to meet you, Gordon.
I have to ask about Brockmire because it is a show that few people are aware of, but I loved the first 3 seasons of it. It is a fantastic show in the first 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about, I guess, coming up with the sound or the way you wanted the music to work for that show?
Yeah, so that show was definitely a fun one to work on. It was a unique character. You definitely have this sort of like stereotypical sports announcer. So we knew a lot of the sound of that show was going to be drawn from the language of the musical language of baseball. There was a lot of baseball organ and guitars and rock music and that kind of thing that played throughout the show. But there is definitely kind of a frenetic energy, and especially as you start dealing with Jim, the main character, Hank Azaria, dealing with his addiction issues, that it definitely goes to some dark places and some really heightened, crazy places throughout the show. So I think I tried to bring some of the nervous energy, and even we get to some emotional points as well within the music. There are a couple of scenes that get very over the top with, especially I think it was in the 3rd season maybe, where things get very dark, and so things get sort of heightened in a very sort of percussive orchestral kind of way within our resources. So while it was a little bit of a mishmash of styles, I tried to adhere to whatever was going on in Hank's mindset at the time, whether it was using some of, as I say, his nervous energy, or some of the more tender parts as he sort of reached into sort of an emotional state. I think that we really got to kind of go on a big journey with Jim Brockmire throughout the course of that show. And I think the music kind of follows suit, all while obviously trying to keep it fun and in a comedy at the same time.
I'm going to interrupt this interview for 1 second. We want to thank PixelView, one of our sponsors. They're a streaming solution for filmmakers. PixelView lets you stream your work to remote clients for easy collaboration, and it works with both on-set teams and post-production teams. With built-in video chat, you can discuss and make changes in real time and stream directly from your editing software. Or you can use the hardware encoder to stream from DaVinci Resolve or the camera on set. See the promo code and the link in the video description below. Now you referred to the music as like a character or creating a character. So is that how you viewed the music when you're approaching a show, that it's like a character that you have to sort of figure out its sound, or like, can you take me through that?
Yeah, of course. I would say absolutely. I think that the music definitely helps set a real tone from the show that sort of helps, obviously, to support the visuals and the action of the story, but it really is unique from show to show or film to film. And I think that it helps provide some insight into the things that you can't see, sort of the subtext in the show. So in Dead to Me, for example, we help sort of set the background of the mystery and the twists and turns, but there are little hints at the emotional core of the show early on, when it might not be evident on screen that there really is some significant depth to these characters at first, in terms of the emotional journey that they're going to go on throughout the show. But to be able to sort of give them some depth musically and plant some seeds that will come to fruition as some of the revelations happen and as some of the bonds start to form. I definitely like to take some time as I'm getting ready for a show to set up what is going to be the sound for that show, and really, make it its own unique thing. Rather than just sort of churning out music, just to be able to sort of help dive into the characters and give a basis for that.
Now, you sort of brought up an interesting thing, and I'm interested how you approach this. or if you're able to approach this in a sense, like when you get the scripts, I guess it's kind of a multi-part question, so I apologize. But I guess my first question would be, do you get all the scripts for the season, or do you get them as they come out? And then my second part is, with all the scripts, once you can see it, how do you build an arc for your music for a season?
So I would say it definitely varies from show to show, and varies depending on either when I'm brought on to the show, how far along in the process, and what the production process is. I would love to get everything as early as possible. Certainly the scripts to get a sense of the overall arc of the show, or the season at least. So if I can, or at the very least, I would love to have sort of an in-depth discussion with the show creator, producer, writers to sort of see where the show is going. You watch those first couple episodes of Dead to Me, it's very difficult to tell where that first season is going to end up, because it takes so many twists and turns. So I love to get as much information as early as possible. And yes, it definitely will help shape the arc of the music, and help sort of give a sense of what the overall template will be. Although I will say, even more than the scripts, the thing that really helps lock it in is just getting any kind of visual cut of the show, whether it's individual scenes or a rough cut, or God willing, a locked cut of the show, to be able to really get a sense of the pacing and the performances and just the visual vibe of the show, because so much of that will inform what the sound is going to be. It's one thing to read something on a page and I'll start imagining what it might look like or how a line might be read, but you never know until really all of the elements start coming together. And usually a lot of that is in place by the time it gets to the composer. So by the time I'm writing, I can really get a sense of the feel of it. And that is the best.
Now, you brought up something again, which makes me wonder, because I've worked in the cutting room, and it used to be, you locked your cut, you passed it off to sound did their magic. But then, digital workflows came along, and now it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So from a music composing perspective, there's certain things like stings you can just shift in a thing, but like if you're trying to create a piece that matches, like how do you deal with that?
There's definitely a lot of back and forth, way more, as the years go by, because people have that flexibility right up until the last minute. We've been in a mix and they've shifted something a little bit to, so it's I would say it is a blessing and a curse, because it is great to have that flexibility to change things up until the last minute, but also then you have the ability to change things up until the last minute. And so it helps to have a sense of like, okay, this is done now, as done as it's going to be. And then, thankfully, if I'll have a music editor who might be able to shift things a little bit if need be. And then if it needs to come back to me to really change something, obviously I'm happy to do it. But I think as long as there's good communication with the cutting room, and on the shows that I've been on, I've been fortunate enough that there has been that communication. If they need something, they'll let me know as early as possible. I'll send it back to them, and we'll have that dialogue kind of ongoing, rather than have it be a surprise at a mix or at a playback or anything like that.
Now, we sort of touched on Dead to Me, so I'm wondering, how did you come up with the sound for Dead to Me?
That's a great question. So there definitely was a little experimentation early on in the show. The show is obviously it's a mystery comedy, and the lots of cliffhangers and twists and turns and things like that. And so, but it's a half-hour comedy, and I think early on we discovered that the two leading women, Christina Applegate and Linda Cardellini, were just so funny on their own, and the chemistry between them was so fabulous that to play any sort of overt comedy music around them really kind of undermined what they were doing. So instead of trying to play up the zaniness or the comedy of what they were doing, in talks with Liz Feldman, the show's creator, we really, she had such a good sense of what the overall vibe and the tone should be. We discovered early on that to lean into the mystery and to keep things kind of serious as opposed to playing anything funny, and just let the leading actors be funny against this backdrop of this heightened, serious, and at times emotional core, really served the comedy well, served the show well overall. And so when we started working on the show, I kind of knew by the end of that second episode that things also would get more emotional in the show. You have this moment in the second episode of the show where Jen, Christina Applegate's character, really kind of lets down her guard and starts dealing with her grief in a way that we hadn't seen up until that point in the show. And it really clued me into the fact that things were, there was more to the show than simply the mystery and simply the comedy, but that there was going to be a bond and an emotional arc, and we leaned into that as well. And especially as the show went on in this third season that just came out, we really leaned into that as well. It's sort of the seeds that we planted in that first season blossomed a bit more by the time we got to the end of the show as well.
So was there any particular instruments that you relied on more for Dead to Me or than you would other shows?
Liz, the show's creator, Liz Feldman, really was drawn to this, I'll say the piano, but not just the piano sound itself, but this very sort of atmospheric, melodic, she sort of liked for those kind of moments to have almost like a haunting piano sound. So I would use it sporadically throughout. And a theme specifically, you have these, we talked about this a little bit as well when we were putting together the show. We have these two lead characters that kind of push and pull away from each other. They're drawn to each other and then they can't stand each other, but then there's this sort of like overall relationship. And we tried to, in putting together a theme, like a melodic theme for them, I definitely had this on this sort of haunting piano sound, this push and pull and this melody away from each other. And we tried to reflect that in a way that, maybe two people would probably recognize, but hopefully provided a good undercurrent for the musical basis for the show.
Now I have to ask, there's a machine behind you.
Yeah.
It looks like it's from the 70s, maybe 80s. What is it, and what does it do?
Yeah, this is a Eurorack modular synthesizer. So I cleaned out all the spaghetti wires so that it would be slightly cleaner. But it's a synthesizer, so it's used to you'll put the patch cords in, and it's not a single manufacturer, but you can sort of get individual modules and piece them together. And so it's fun I definitely enjoy the sort of the sound design aspect of it. I will say this was not used as much on Dead to Me, although I did use it on You're the Worst, which I worked on. The way I like to use it is to hook it up to my recording system and just sort of improvise for half hour, an hour on end, and sort of see what where the sounds go. I'll record it and then I'll sort of cull usable bits for stuff that I'm working on. I have big sound libraries of sound design and stuff that I've made that if I can put it into a project, then great.
And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com or of course on Twitter at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.